Welcome to a Wednesday edition of The Sweat. We're halfway to the weekend, and I'm half of tonight's hosting duo, Jessie Coffield, alongside Adam Kaufman.
You're the better half, though.
Oh, come on, stop it.
I think all of our analysts would agree with that, so we're just going to ride this thing out. 60 minutes of DFS and sports betting advice coming your way, folks, but we are going to start in the association with our NBA panel. We got Ryan Mogjosh, host of the Four Seasons podcast for Ball is Life, and Alex Barutha of RotoWire, also Ben Heisler from Fantasy Insider for 610 Sports Radio in Kansas City.
The name of the game, guys, is pick and roll. We give you two options at each position. You pick one, and you roll off the other. It is simple. Starting at center, Anthony Davis has the highest salary, but is expected to be held out of a back-to-back. Now, another top option, Joel Embiid, is also resting, which brings us to Karl Anthony Towns. He's 9,300 with the T-Wolves hosting the Spurs, or you can pay down a little and go with Orlando's Nikola Vucevic at 8,300. So, Ryan, two-part question for you. Part one, who do you like from that duo? Part two, any other centers catch your eyes on this slate?
Part one, Cat, if I had to choose one, versus Spurs. And the reason for that is Vooch is struggling this year. All his stats are down from last season, and not to mention he's playing versus Embiid and the Sixers, whose defense is long and strong. I don't like the matchup for Vooch, so I'm going with Cat if I had to choose between those two. But there is a center that I like also. Clint Capella for 7.4K. I really like his matchup. Primetime TV, ESPN. Capella for me versus the Clippers tonight.
Alex, same goes for you. Two-part question.
I like Towns here. I think 9,300 is a steal for him. I mean, if we take away the game where he was ejected in Philly, Towns hasn't posted fewer than 47 DraftKings points all year, and he has two games over 70 DraftKings points. His upside is just far too high for him to be priced under 10K. And as far as other centers on the slate that I do like Al Horford here. Embiid out for rest. Al Horford sees an 11% usage bump when Embiid's off the court. So I think that's a really strong spot to play him as well.
Ben, are you going with Cat? Do you like somebody else? Oh, can't hear you, Ben. Uh-oh.
You guys got me now?
Yes!
There it is. Okay, yeah, it's three Cats on the slate. Sorry about the mix-up there. 49.5 DK points last time out, and that's actually below what we typically expect out of Karl Anthony Towns. The thing is, if you go back and look through the box score, he did it in just over 30 minutes. So assuming Karl Anthony Towns plays his typical 32 through 35 minutes per game, he's averaging 1.71 DraftKings points per minute. So if you up that up 3-4 minutes, that 50 points starts to turn into 56, maybe closer to even 60 in a great matchup. I really think that San Antonio is not going to slow him down. I'm not concerned about LaMarcus Aldridge and Jakob Poeltl. They don't really scare me. I don't imagine they're going to scare Karl Anthony Towns as well. To the second question, if you're looking at some other value centers, I still think Hassan Whiteside continues to be underpriced for Portland at 6,400. And as Alex mentioned, Al Horford, only 5,900 tonight with no Joel Embiid. I think he's a fantastic value play.
We do not always have the best memorabilia backdrops, but I'm digging. You got the bobblehead back there. I think that was a Bulls Wheatie box. You had Pete Rose. I mean,
crushing
rolling,
it,
baby. All right.
It's fun to root for the Bulls again.
Yeah, so there you go. All right, at forward, LeBron James, highest salary, $10,700. Clearly not cheap, but we're looking for a pair of former teammates. You got Kawhi Leonard, $9,700 in Houston. Pascal Siakam weighs in a grand less than that at Portland. So, Alex, these two, clearly they won a title together in Toronto. They'll have a little fun being on opposite sides, but who are you sticking with for tonight?
I'm going to save the grand. I'm going to go with Siakam here. Averaging 43 minutes across the past two games. I mean, the Raptors are just decimated by injuries right now. He really needs to step up for them. Siakam averaging 52 DraftKings points across the past four games. You know, as far as Kawhi goes, I mean, he's almost never a bad guy to pick here. But if Paul George does come back for the Clippers tonight, Kawhi's usage might take a little bit of a dip, and I would just rather not risk that. I like Siakam, the workload that he's getting and the usage that he's seeing.
Ben, I believe Kendrick Perkins, who used to play in the NBA Analyst, now actually calls Kawhi Jordan. He thinks they're just that similar, so I know you can appreciate that there in Chicago. What do you think between these two?
Listen, if there's somebody that's comparing the great MJ with Kawhi Leonard, it's hard for me to go against Kawhi Leonard, but I will do so in this situation. Give me Pascal Siakam. Give me the savings at 8,700. He gets to face the Blazers, who couldn't stop the Kings last night in the second game of a back-to-back. And I think you still look at what the value is for Siakam. He's exceeded his projected total 3 straight games, 2 games over 40 points, 1 game at 64.5. And again, if Portland can't slow down the Sacramento Kings, despite the Kings playing at a bottom 5 pace level this year, which is really surprising considering that they were tops in the NBA at pace a season ago, I'm not sure how they're stopping Pascal Siakam, so I love that value for him at 8,700 tonight.
Okay, no Paul George yet, Ryan, so clearly Kawhi is Kawhi, but what do you think? You got him, you got Siakam.
Yeah, I'm not mad at you both for picking Siakam. I really like both of these guys tonight. I picked Leonard, but you can't go wrong. The only part I'm worried about is we saw 2 nights ago, Blake Griffin came back for the Pistons, and I was scared to play Andre Drummond, and sure enough, Drummond had his worst game of the year. I think integrating other star players into the lineup makes the star player that was healthy before kind of take a step backwards. So I'm kind of keeping my eye on that, but you really can't go wrong with either one of them.
All right, guys, James Harden is the slate's highest priced player at $11,700, but you have some other good options at guard. These two guys facing off at almost the exact same price. Boston's Kemba Walker is $8,600, while Bradley Beal is $8,500 as the Wizards take on the Celtics at the Garden. Ben, it's another 2-part question. So who are you going with in this matchup? And if you don't like these options, could you maybe look at some value at the guard position tonight?
Yeah, Jesse, for about $100 more, I will take the lead guard at home, who's exceeded value in 6 of his last 7 games, going up against a pretty porous Wizards defense. So I will take Kemba Walker tonight. Celtics have a Vegas implied total of about 118.5 points tonight. Nice high team total on both sides at 229.5. And really, if you look at what Kemba Walker has been doing, he's been instrumental to Boston's red-hot start this year. Over the last 8 games, this is from Hoop Central on Twitter, Kemba Walker averaging 26.6 points per game to go along with 5.5 rebounds, nearly 5 assists, and is actually shooting 45% from 3-point range and 92% from the charity stripe. He's doing everything well, and of course in those games the Celtics are 8-0. So I love Kemba Walker tonight. I think it's a great price point, even at 100 more than Bradley Beal. Again, if we're looking for value, you can go with the former Celtic and scary Terry Rozier. He's in play at home against Memphis for 5,600. And then Patrick Beverley for the Clippers could be a good value play versus Houston. You got a fast-paced matchup. We'll see whether or not there's some potential injury news coming out later on tonight. So if there's going to be some guys missing that game for the Clippers, I think you can go ahead and throw in Patrick Beverley and feel very, very good about it.
Ryan, what are you doing here?
Yeah, I like the matchup Kemba has. The Wizards stink, and they play fast, which is a great combination for opposing teams. But I went with Bradley Beal here. He's averaging the most field goal attempts, points, and assists in his entire career. When I watch Bradley Beal, it looks like he's discovered something new, and he's facilitating way more. So, again, I really like the matchup for both teams. You can't go wrong with Kemba versus the stinky Wizards, but I chose Bradley Beal.
The stinky Wizards. Where are you going on this one, Alex?
I like Kemba here. I like the matchup. The Wizards allow the 9th most fantasy points to point guards. Celtics allow the 9th fewest fantasy points to shooting guards for Beal, but I think, we've covered those guys. My value pick, it's not a huge value. I do like Devontae Graham, the guy next to Terry Rozier. For the Hornets, Dwayne Bacon is expected to be out for this game, and when Bacon's off the court, Graham averages 46 DraftKings points per 36 minutes. Now at 6,900, that's not insane value, but it's a really good pricing. I think a reasonable pivot off of Walker and Beal.
Look, I know I got to get to the next question, but how does not one of you say that Bradley Beal is not the answer simply because as long as Isaiah Thomas is on the court, he's not getting a single shot tonight? IT's return with the Wizards, king of the fourth, playing against his old team, wants to drop 50 openly. Got to go Kemba, boys. All right, slate-approved pick. Who's your lock for tonight's 7-game slate? Ryan, let's start with you.
A guy that I'm starting in every lineup I have is James Harden. Now, he's the most expensive person in the entire slate. I get that. I'm just a sucker for these primetime games. I think that players are aware that they're playing on ESPN and that everybody's going to be watching. Clash of the Titans kind of thing. Playing the Clippers, playing a team that has a guy that's going to come in and try to integrate himself and Paul George maybe for a few minutes. I think James Harden's going to take advantage of that. I like James against this Clippers team tonight.
The ultimate move for the beard. Add Russell Westbrook, still put up 40 points a game.
Right.
What do you think, Alex?
I like Al Horford as my lock here. With him beat out, Horford gets that nice usage bump. It could end up being a slow-paced game in Orlando, but I think Horford's such a good passer, shooter, rebounder, defender. I think he can just make it work.
All around Al. Ben, what do you say?
All right, listen, so I was back on Monday, and my lock of the slate was Brandon Ingram. And then we found out 20 minutes before tip that Brandon Ingram wasn't playing. So I'm going to give you two tonight, one in cash, one in GPP, to try and make up for what happened on Monday night. My cash game lock is Jaren Jackson of the Grizzlies at only 4,800 tonight at Charlotte. He has a plus-minus matchup of nearly 3 against the Hornets tonight. He's gotten at least 32 DraftKings points in both of his last games. Severely underpriced, a great value play to be able to get to some of the studs tonight. And my GPP lock, a guy that we talked about a little bit earlier, in Pascal Siakam, 8,700, still underpriced for me. A lot of people are going to try and figure out a way to get James Harden, LeBron, Kat, and Kawhi priced up, but facing Houston in their lineup tonight. So I think ownership on Siakam is actually going to be surprisingly low. And again, considering all the injuries with Toronto right now, I think he's a fantastic play. Go ahead and lock him up in your GPPs tonight.
First segment, our man's already going for extra credit.
I love it. He's like, this will not happen to me again.
I'm not
Good
getting burned
stuff.
twice.
Yeah.
One of these two is going to play, damn it.
Good stuff, guys. Thank you. Next up, we're bringing in our NFL panel to talk spreads. But first, here's Pat Mayo with some running back advice for you.
Brian Hill and the upper $4,000 area, as you alluded to at the very beginning of the show, is going to be the mega chalk of the week at Carolina. But here's the problem. Brian Hill, is he good? Is he bad? Who knows? But running backs in the Atlanta offense so far this season really haven't done much. It is an ideal matchup on the ground against Carolina, as they're much more susceptible to being gashed by the run than they are through the air, especially if Bradbury returns this week. But it's a game flow that looks like it's going to be a lot of passing for Atlanta, like most of their games, unless anyone is buying what they did a week ago as something that's sustainable. I don't really believe that. Just seems sort of like a peak Super Bowl-esque game for them. Not them in the Super Bowl, but their Super Bowl for this season. Come out, beat a division rival in the Saints. Maybe they can pay it forward and keep this momentum going. I don't think that's going to happen. So Brian Hill, to me, is not a safe play like Jalen Samuels was 2 weeks ago. I think he falls more into that Ty Johnson bucket from 3 weeks ago when everyone was super pumped up about him. And I think that there is a breaking point for his ownership. I don't think that he is a free square. I don't think that you have to have him in your lineups. And if he's going to be like 25% owned, potentially even more, I think he's a full fade. Then you can start looking to some of these other options who are basically equivalent. Maybe not in the full smash spot that it appears to be, but Jordan Howard against the Patriots at $4,700, I think is in a really nice spot. Carlos Hyde can steal some touchdowns. J.D. McKissick would have been this guy if Brian Hill hadn't emerged because of this Freeman injury, because of this Ty Johnson injury. You might see like 65%, 75% run from McKissick this week at $4,600, and I bet you he catches more passes than Brian Hill does.
Oh, for sure he's going to catch more passes. I'm personally am in the same boat with you. I am a little concerned. I think people might be a little bit enamored with the fact that Carolina is the dead last team in the game against the run, ranked 32nd in DVOA run defense, and also give up a boatload more touchdowns than any other team on the ground, 17 to be exact. I myself actually dropped Brian Hill on my 2 primetime teams last week. So that one's killing me. I could really actually use him this week. So, but that's not a reason that I don't think he doesn't do well. I just, I think it's a good game flow scenario for Carolina where they're going to run the ball down the throats with McCaffrey. A lot of passes. I like the Carolina side of the ball. And so game script wise, I don't necessarily know if he's going to get a lot of carries. I think you're going to see Matt Ryan chasing from behind. And I don't know if that involves a lot of passes to Brian Hill. Sure, he might catch 3 or 4. But as you alluded to, I think there are guys in this range like a J.D. McKissick who I think will catch more passes and probably offer more value on a full PPR side.
Yeah, despite the terrible run defense of the Carolina Panthers, per DVOA, the Falcons are only 25th in rushing offense. And then you're going to need Brian Hill to stay in the game if they are behind and catch a lot of these passes. And he caught a few last week, but this could be a situation where they now know that they don't have Devonta Freeman, that all of a sudden Kenyon Barner is the pass-catching back, and all of a sudden you're sitting there being like, why isn't Brian Hill on the field? I have him in every lineup. This isn't good.
All right, as we head into the Week 11 slate here, NFL action, let's take a look at some of the spreads. Quad Box, welcome into DraftKings contributors Jeff Ulrich, Reed Fowler, Steve Buchanan, and Julian Edlow. All of you keep your hands to yourselves.
Please, okay? Now, are the following Week 11 spreads too high, too low, just right? Guys, that is the question. Okay, the Saints are 5-point favorites at the Bucs. Too high or too low for you, Jeff?
I think it's a little bit too low. I think people obviously coming off the New Orleans loss to Atlanta, probably just a little bit lower sentiment on New Orleans than usual. New Orleans has been a good team covering on the road, especially as away favorites. They're 6-3 over the last couple seasons. And then you just have a matchup of quarterbacks. One is a very high turnover quarterback. The other one just isn't. It's very similar to last week, what we saw with Kyler Murray and Jameis Winston. And I know Arizona lost that game, but they still covered. And they covered pretty comfortably. And I kind of feel the same way about New Orleans in this spot. I know they're going to have trouble running the ball, but again, I just feel like Drew Brees is going to be able to do enough. New Orleans defense should be in a big bounce back spot here too. So I think this one's a little bit too small. I'll take New Orleans right now at -5.
Reed, too small for you?
Yeah, just a little bit. If you look at the Saints coming off a loss, they're 8-1 over the last couple of years, and their margin of victory is around a touchdown. So if this number starts to creep up a little bit, 6.5, 7, you might be a little timid off of that. They're 2-5 against the spread after a straight-up loss. The Saints are, and again, there is that split with Drew Brees in the offense when they're on their home turf, as opposed to away, not inside the Superdome. So that scares me a little bit. But when you talk about the Saints and a guy like Sean Payton, Drew Brees, after a loss like this, an embarrassing loss, they're looking to right the ship very quickly. So I'm with Jeff here.
Steve, you going with the guys?
I'm trying to look on the map where Jeff is saying. I know New Orleans. I don't know what the other place that he was talking about, but whatever. We'll look at that one. Look, this is too low for me. I mean, the Saints have been excellent against the spread so far this season, 6-3 on the year. Tampa only 2-7. They've been one of the worst with right in the same realm as Atlanta. And the biggest weakness for Tampa is that they just get absolutely annihilated through the air. I know they have a really tough run defense, but Alvin Kamara is someone who can catch 6, 7, 8 passes out of the backfield if he needs to. So I think this is too low. I think the Saints really go out and beat Tampa pretty convincingly. And like Jeff said too, like other than whatever he was calling the team, Winston is just so turnover prone. Like we saw that those 2 games where he had 7 interceptions. It was just an absolute nightmare for him. And like he easily can have one of those games against the Saints. So yeah, I think this is too low.
Jules, or is it unanimous? Too low?
It is unanimous, which is usually a bad thing or a scary spot or a trap line or something. But no matter who New Orleans was going to play this week, we were probably going to consider it a bounce-back spot, mostly for Drew Brees in the offense, because I think them getting shut down at home by Atlanta's defense was more the storyline in that game. The Falcons can score, but New Orleans defense is better than it showed. It's really a bounce-back spot for both sides of the ball, and now we get it against a team that's been terrible covering the spread this year. So everything about this spot points to New Orleans trying to get right offensively, trying to get right defensively, and doing it against a turnover-prone quarterback that's bad at covering the spread. And they get to do it against a secondary in Tampa that's just been brutal this year. So Michael Thomas is in a dream matchup, Ted Ginn in a dream matchup. It's just a spot where New Orleans can make big plays and win this game by a touchdown or more.
Guys, Vikings 10.5-point favorites at home against the Broncos. So does that number make sense here, Reed? Is it too high, too low? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think at first glance, for me, it's too high. And the reason is it's not necessarily because Minnesota can't go out and win this game pretty handily. You got Brandon Allen making his second start, and the biggest discrepancy is Minnesota's defensive line against that Denver bad offensive line. They're 4th in adjusted sack rate, Minnesota is, and they have really good defensive ends. And so that does give you more of an advantage clearly in picking Minnesota. But if you look at Denver, 4-1 against the spread in the last 5 overall, and 2-1 as away underdogs. And so even if this team doesn't have a lot of players, a lot of skill players, are not going to be able to run the ball, I don't think Minnesota is going to be a 10, or they don't need necessarily to be a 10-point favorite to win this game. I have them projected around a 24, 25-point team total, because I really don't think Denver can score that much on this team. So I'm going to say this is too high right now.
All right, Jules, so kind of what I'm hearing from Reed is there's the arsenal, there's the talent from the Vikings to cover the 10.5, but basically history is not on Minnesota's side. What do you think?
Yeah, good job listening, Kaufman.
Thank you. Like to recap every once in a while.
Yeah, you can just recap after everyone talks. I'm sure the viewers would really like that.
I'm going to move on in a second if you don't tell me too high or too low.
I'll keep it quick. It's too high. I agree with most of Reed's points. Denver, good against the spread. The 4-1 over the last 5 games. They've been decent. They have the type of defense that can slow down a Minnesota offense that's been kind of a letdown this year. They like to use Dalvin Cook to run the ball. That's generally good for maybe an under type of game, which usually means keeping it within 10 points. And the stock on Kirk Cousins in this offense couldn't be higher. I don't think many of us expected them to win at Dallas in a primetime game on Sunday Night Football. I definitely didn't. And now the perception is kind of high on the Vikings, and they're giving away a lot of points here. I think that, if Minnesota had lost a close game, a 3-point game on Sunday Night Football, this spread would be a whole lot different. So I'll take the 10.5 points here.
All right, so Steve, what we heard from Jules is basically what Reed said, but it just took longer. What do you think?
Yeah, if you like recaps of things you already know, definitely follow Adam and Kaufman.
Yes, 100%.
They call them cough drops.
Yep.
The slate approved, pretty good.
This feels too high to me. I mean, we got 2 good teams against the spread. Minnesota's 6-4, Denver's 5-4, but 10.5 points just feels like a lot against the Broncos secondary that's really been really good so far this season. Like, I feel like it's one of those secondaries that you just don't hear a lot about, but each and every week they're just shutting down opposing wide receivers. They're only allowing an average of 123 yards per game, which is amongst the lowest in the league. So I just don't know where this 10.5 points is going to come from for Minnesota to cover. Like, I feel like Minnesota will win this game. I think Dalvin Cook should have a good game against a pretty poor Denver running defense, but 10.5 just feels too high to me here. I was surprised when this first came out, seeing it as high as it is, so I think this is too high.
People don't love the 10.5 here, Ulrich. What do you think?
It's a lot of points, man. I mean, you're basically asking the Vikings to blow out the Broncos, which, I mean, they're probably not going to have Adam Thielen again. And look, Denver's only allowed 5 yards per play this season. That's the 7th best total in the league. So basically, they're performing the 7th best in that area. They're not giving up a ton of huge plays. I don't know, man. Like, it's just too much. I think people are going to look at the trends here and see Minnesota's a really good home cover team, but I would lean towards the Broncos if it stays at 10.5. 9.5, I'd probably think more about the Vikings.
Carolina is favored by 5.5 when the Falcons come to town. Too high or too low for you, Steve?
If you listen to the Panel B podcast, which I'm sure you've already all done, like,
absolutely,
this is actually one of my favorite bets right now. This feels too low for the Panthers. I mean, aside from last week, the Falcons defense has just been an absolute doormat. They're out allowing an average of 28, almost 29 points per game to opposing teams. Their quarterbacks are amongst the worst in the league. And then all the injuries they're dealing with right now. There's no more Devonta Freeman. He's out for a couple weeks. Austin Hooper is going to be out for a few weeks now. Like, that just basically leaves them with Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, and they can't seem to get the ball to them on a consistent basis to begin with. If Carolina gets James Bradbury back in the mix too, that makes a big difference. There's just way too many things that are against the Falcons to go and cover this spread, which, by the way, they're amongst one of the worst teams in the league in doing so. 5.5. Take it now. It's an absolute steal.
Well, Julian, you're part of the Panel B podcast, so what was your take on this?
Yeah, congratulations to Panel B on becoming America's most listened to podcast.
Congrats.
So obviously everybody by now knows Steve's pick on Carolina. Look, I think it's a little bit more trappy than Steve feels, but at the same time, I'm not going to bet Atlanta because the outlook on the entire season so far has been terrible for them. They've been getting blown out. They have a terrible defense, and that could obviously come back to haunt them in this game. That said, they made some changes that obviously worked last week in New Orleans on the defensive side of the ball. So I'm a little bit hesitant to see if they've turned some kind of corner. But if you're making me play this game, it's Carolina. They've been the better team all year long. They have a well-rounded defense. They have Christian McCaffrey in that run game. And in theory, Carolina should be able to get receivers downfield against this Atlanta secondary.
Jeff of Canada's Panel A podcast, what do you think?
That is not true at all.
It's pretty hard to decide with Atlanta. I mean, it really is. Steve mentioned the injuries, and I think that's the biggest thing for me, too. I mean, they're basically relying on their third-string running back here. I know their defense played well last week, but, I mean, it's just a letdown spot. I mean, they got their pound of flesh. They made the big upset. Everyone shocked them, but are they going to do it 2 weeks in a row? Do you really want to rely on that 2 weeks in a row? I mean, less than a touchdown here for Carolina, who just about beat Green Bay on the road last week. let's not forget. The only thing that would worry me here is if we got bad news on the Christian McCaffrey knee injury, which doesn't sound that serious, but it's something to keep an eye on. 5.5, I think it's too low.
How did you not say Falcons even one time?
It was on purpose.
He said Atlanta,
It
yeah.
was, of course it was.
Yeah.
He
Reed,
knows.
what do you think?
It's not that difficult to see why Atlanta sucks. They lost Tevin Coleman, Jeff's boy, and ever since then they've been going downhill. Look, unlike the team that they beat in the Saints, they're one of the worst teams against the spread coming off a straight-up win. They're 1-4 ATS. They're not a good team that follows up these wins. And clearly, even though they made some changes last game to what Julian was saying, and that was their Super Bowl, I don't see it happening twice. You got Carolina, who are really good as favorites against the spread. So I'm with Steve here. I think it's Carolina all the way.
All right, let's do another one. Jekyll and Hyde Cowboys favored by 4.5 in Detroit. So is Dallas going to pull this off here, Jules, or just lose to the Lions like most people probably think?
I'd say most people probably don't think that. Kaufman,
No,
maybe
it's very Cowboys-esque. Lose to the Lions, go and beat the Patriots. That's the way their season goes.
None of that's going to happen, but thanks for participating.
Happy to be here.
So I think that this obviously depends a lot on Matthew Stafford. If Stafford is out, the 4.5 points is going to be a steal. If Stafford's in, then this spread is just about right. I guess the question is how healthy he is, but Stafford's been pretty good playing through injuries all season. So not to cop out, but this has got to be a wait-and-see approach because the opposing quarterback is a huge piece of this spread. The difference between Stafford and what's his name, Jeff Driscoll, that started the other day and kept things competitive against the Bears, but Mitch Trubisky's probably a worse quarterback than everybody that we've named so far. So I would lean Cowboys here. It's the safer side, but I would want to wait and get Stafford news before doing so.
Bukes, any interest in deciding now while we ask the question?
Well, if you listened to the Panel B podcast earlier today, you would know this is actually my second favorite play on the week. I don't give a crap if Stafford is in. I don't care if he's out. I don't care if he comes on the field with one leg or two legs. Whatever his issue is, bad back, put a brace on, get on the field. This is an absolute steal right now. The Cowboys should have absolutely no problem beating the Lions in this game. How are they going to stop Ezekiel Elliott? They're one of the worst run defenses in the league. All Dallas has to do is get up to like a 2-score lead. This game is already over because Zeke will just run out the clock, and that's all they have to do here. I have no doubt that the Cowboys are going to win this one. I would even put like a little lock symbol. If we have one ready in the graphics department, I put a big lock on the screen right now.
We'll find out.
It's going to go. 4.5, take it now. I don't care if Stafford comes back. Boom. You like that one. And for a recap of what I just said, Adam M. Kaufman.
Angry elf there, Reed. What do you think?
No, I mean, I'll come to your stead there, Kaufman, and back you up a little bit. Cowboys, what you were saying, really good since 2017 against division opponents, 14-2 and straight up wins. But when they're out of division, they're 11-16. And that's kind of what the Cowboys do, right? Is the teams, and to what you were saying, the teams that they're supposed to win, or the teams that they have a high advantage against, they just sometimes don't show up. Amari Cooper's health is in question a little bit. I think he's going to be fine. I think Julian is right. It does matter with Stafford because this is a team that kept it close with Kansas City and kept it close with Green Bay previously.
They lost to the Jets.
Yes, they lost to the Jets, but that was Sam Darnold coming back, baby.
Oh,
on the white horse.
Before the ghost showed up.
Yeah, no. Right now, it's a good number right now, but I'm with Julian here. You got to wait and see.
Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really want to take the Cowboys after they completely destroyed my 5-team parlay last week, but I'm going to take them again here. I pretty much agree with everything Steve said. Detroit's defense is absolutely crumbling. They're 7th worst in terms of yards per play right now. They can't stop the run. Everything that Dallas couldn't do with Ezekiel Elliott last week, they're going to be able to do against Detroit. So even Jason Garrett's terrible coaching and giving the ball to Zeke in spots he shouldn't, it's probably not going to matter. I think Dallas wins this in blow.
All right, thanks, guys. Julian is out of here, but the rest of you will be back to close the show, and we're previewing some interesting college basketball games when we come back.
Hey there, I'm Brendan Glasheen with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. Don't you dare tell Saquon Barkley to shut it down. Just don't do it, because he says it won't happen. Barkley said Tuesday, the mindset of sitting me out and resting me for the rest of the season is beyond me. I'm going to keep going until I can't go no more. His fiery stance stems from the star running back having an X-ray on his injured shoulder, which is expected to be fine. And remember, Barkley is still working back from that high ankle sprain that kept him out 3 games in October. Barkley said everyone's banged up, dealing with something this time of year. True, numbers don't lie though. He's averaging just about 2.5 yards per carry the last 4 games compared to nearly 6.5 per over the first few weeks. I get where Saquon's coming from if the Giants were truly in it, and we're talking just the NFC East here. They're 2-8, 6 games to go. If they run the table, maybe there's a shot. They still have 2 head-to-head matchups with Philly, but that's it. Dallas swept them. G-men are done. No one would question Barkley's competitiveness and toughness if he shut it down, but Pat Shurmur echoed him. Absolutely not, considering the idea of shutting him down. Coming from the guy who is on the hot seat. Shocker. Running back shelf lives are short in the first place in the NFL. Don't mess this up, Giants.
When the Cowboys lose, man, it's not by much. It really isn't. Nick Eatman covers Dallas for the team's website. Nick, fresh off 2 straight wins and, of course, the bye between. Boys hosted the Vikings, only lost by 4. Third time this year, Dallas has fallen by fewer than 5 points. Do you worry about that coming back to bite the team by the end of the year?
Yes. Yeah.
Matter-of-factly, yes.
Yeah. I mean, these are games that you could win because usually it balances out. You know, oh, you lost these 4 games, but, you know, you barely won these 4. It all works out. That's not happening this year. You know, the Cowboys are losing by, I think it's an average of 4 points a game. And like you said, and then the wins are 19.5. So they're blowing out these teams in these 5 wins, and these games are really, really close if they're losing. So yeah, I do think the Jets game is going to come back to bite them. But this Vikings game might even hurt them more than that, just because of NFC record, and they might be tied with the Vikings down the stretch for a wild card spot. So yeah, that was a really tough loss in a lot of ways there.
Well, and in that game, tell me if I miss anything. Slow start, defense couldn't get off the field, questionable play calling. It's pretty much the perfect recipe for a loss. Can you take solace in the fact that Dak Prescott, Amari Cooper, Randall Cobb, Michael Gallup, these guys all had big days, along with obviously a couple of the defenders too? Or does that just kind of reinforce that the team is mostly one-sided right now?
Well, that's what's weird is that, to be a one-sided team, and to say that, well, that all they are is a passing team, when this team has really been built on the run. I think that they did what they had to do, and they really took what was given to them. And that was a really good performance by Dak. But I think at the end of the day that's not how this team is going to win games, and they didn't win that one. I mean, they needed to run the ball, and so. Yeah, it's great to pass like that, but when it's time to run it, and they needed to run the ball, get a couple of yards, they could not do that. So I don't think you take solace from that. I do think Dak played one of his better games of his career, but they needed to run the ball better there in the red zone, not just in the drive that most people remember, but the one before that when they only got a field goal down a touchdown. They needed to be able to run the ball in there. So all good teams are balanced for the most part, and I don't think that the Cowboys were balanced in that game, but for the most part, I think that they have been.
What's going on, people? I am Brendan Glasheen alongside DraftKings contributor Julian Edlow. We are here to get you ready for college football Saturday, presented by Wrangler. Jules, we've got 9 games to choose from.
9 of them.
9 for this Wrangler contest. It's going to start for us in Ann Arbor. Number 14, Michigan, taking on its arch rival in the Big Ten, Michigan State. Big Blues the favorite, coming off that big win over Maryland. How do the Wolverines fare against the Spartans, a team that's lost 4 in a row?
So I like the spot for Michigan a lot at home to win this game, but I think that the perception is that Michigan can blow out Michigan State here, and that just isn't going to happen in a rivalry game like this. No matter what the teams are ranked, no matter what the win-loss columns say, these two teams generally play very close games. So while I do think Michigan can prevail here, they're definitely the more talented team. A defensive-minded Michigan State team can always come into this matchup and make it an exciting game.
In the SEC, number 5 Georgia has rallied since losing to South Carolina in overtime a few weeks ago. Bulldogs now host number 13 Auburn, who just topped Ole Miss. Where are you leaning here?
Yeah, really disappointing loss at this point for Georgia. Had they prevailed there, they would probably be sitting undefeated in the college football playoff. But now this is a chance for them to get a huge ranked win the week after Alabama and Penn State lose. Huge opportunity for them to potentially jump into the top 4 at some point.
All right, and finally in the ACC, Clemson surely looked highly motivated against NC State over the weekend. Last week, the third-ranked Tigers left out of the committee's top 4 for the college football playoff. They get Wake Forest at home now. Clemson by a million, maybe?
Yeah, not much else to say here on that narrative. They came out, slighted out of that first college football poll and just absolutely dominated NC State. I expect more of the same against Wake. So sorry to Wake Forest, but Clemson's just going to keep throttling teams and go undefeated this season.
All right, I am Brendan Glasheen. He is DraftKings contributor Julian Edlow. That is a look at some of Saturday's top college football matchups presented by Wrangler.
All right, we're back. It's time to take a look at the college hoop slate. One night after Evansville just stunned top-ranked Kentucky at Rupp. You can't imagine anything tonight is going to live up to that, but hey, we're going to try. We'll see what Rob Snyder has to say. He is the bracket guru for NBC Sports Boston. What's up, man?
How are you, Adam?
Doing well, aren't you? All right, well, we want to go over/under with you, Rob. 10th-ranked Villanova is visiting number 16 Ohio State. The game total is 127.5. Do you expect this game to go over or under that number?
Yeah, I think this one's going over. Villanova, if their first game was any indication, they plan on pushing the pace a little bit more this season. They lost Phil Booth and Eric Paschal, but I actually think that this team's going to be better at creating shots than last year's team. They've gone over in 6 of their last 7 games, if you like trends going back to last season. Ohio State opened the season against Cincinnati, and I don't know if either of you saw that game, but it was as ugly as you could imagine a college basketball game could be, and they still hit 120 points. I think this team will be a little bit cleaner than that one. There's no way that they don't score at least 8 more points in this game, so I kind of like the over here.
All right, well, you'd have to climb quite a bit to get to the over of this one. Tons of projected points between St. Joe's and UConn. 157.5. What do you think here, Buckets? Over or under?
And climb they will. I can't believe I'm saying this because that number is huge, but I am still going to say over here. Both teams play at a very, very high pace. That's key when you're looking at over-under is how fast they go. I believe St. Joe's 12th fastest team in the country. Another fun fact about St. Joe's is defense is optional there, apparently, this year. They don't look like they're going to defend at all. UConn also doesn't really defend that well. So I expect the points to go high. Fun fact about these teams, again, if you like trends, UConn has gone over in their last 5 November games. St. Joe's also has gone over in their last 5 November games. So I expect this one to somehow get above that 157.5 mark.
Well, big offensive output expected. Not as big as that game, but 4th-ranked Louisville has Indiana State in town. The number is 146. So, Rob, would you go over or under that total?
For this one, again, I'm going over, and trust me, this isn't just me picking over on everything.
Just loves
but
points.
Louisville is one of the best teams in the country right now. Chris Mack teams have a history of coming out hot. They're hitting their threes early, which is good. Indiana State, not a very good team, so expect Louisville to score a ton. And again, if you're into trends, Indiana State, they've gone over in 4 of their last 5 games. Louisville also has gone over in 4 of their last 6. Louisville will score, and they'll score a lot here. Expect them to carry this game to the over.
All right, I guess we're going to go just on the gradual decline in terms of projected points. Providence and Northwestern, just a hair more defensive, maybe. A line set at 135.5. So, Rob, tell me here why this one will not go under.
No, this one is going under.
Okay, all right,
there
we go.
Under, yes. And part of that's because Northwestern is just a disgrace offensively. If you didn't see, they lost to Merrimack already this season. The Big Ten is down. But this one's going under. Providence really likes to muck it up. They're a physical team, and they're playing against, obviously, a team that's not good offensively already. Providence, again, trends under in 8 of their last 9 Wednesday games, and Northwestern under in 10 of their last 14. So despite the fact this is a lower number, I do expect this to be an under here.
All right, last one, Purdue at Marquette with an over-under total of 142. Which way would you invest your money, over-under?
Yeah, and this may shock you because Marquette is traditionally a very good offensive team. Purdue is obviously just a good team in general. But I'm going under here. Purdue, very good defensively, and they play very slow. And Marquette, obviously, they like to play high pace, but it's a lot easier in college basketball to slow a team down than it is to speed them up. I think Purdue puts a lot in Marcus Howard's way. Purdue's gone under in 6 of their last 7 Wednesday games. That's always fun. And the other thing is, it seems as though bettors are already liking this. Some books already have this over-under down to 140. I've even seen one book that has it down to 139. So bettors obviously like the under here, despite the fact that this is 2 pretty good offensive teams.
Rob, that was fun, man. Thanks a lot.
You got it, man.
All right, we'll be joined by the panel B Bros. Apparently, a really
the most watched podcast in America.
Well-rated, 1 million subscribers just overnight. It's
Incredible.
unbelievable. Panel B guys are coming up with a look at their Week 11 picks, and then when we're back, hockey talk. Don't go anywhere.
Jaguars, they're +3, going to Indianapolis. Do not know who's playing quarterback for Indianapolis yet, which could change things if it's Brissett or it's Hoyer. I think it might be Hoyer, though. We'll see. But we do know who's playing quarterback for the Jaguars. It's Nick Foles. Nick Foles is back. Not your pick.
This is a risky pick.
That's what
Tell me
the
why.
noise about.
Because number one, we don't know anything about either quarterback. We don't know what Foles is going to look like, and we don't know who the quarterback.
We don't know what Nick Foles. Do we need to roll the tape of his Super Bowl performance again?
Oh, stop!
Or what he was doing against the Chiefs before the throw that he made with half a collarbone?
Okay.
That sequencing might be off a little, but
you're also directly challenging what is a trend: 0-6 straight up and against the spread, coming off the London game.
Ooh.
Can't
What do you
wait.
think about that?
Can't wait. There's no heavy favorite money line parlay to, go up against.
Wow. He's going after you. You have nothing to say?
I have nothing to say. I gave my 2 plays.
God, you're soft
I also
today.
said that you can parlay them for plus money.
And here I am
On the
to
money
pander to the rest of my panelists here. I'm going Patriots -3.5.
Wow.
Because of that Super Bowl again. That's right. I'm still living 2 years in the past. They're out for revenge.
Both of your picks are based off of a Super Bowl 2 years ago.
One might call it a coincidence, but
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the guy with the best record on the show, by the way.
Yeah, what does that say about you guys?
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Silence.
I wouldn't have clapped back
Crickets.
there, Bucks.
Patriots -3.5. I think they're going to be able to move the ball through the air as long as they just commit one tight end or one running back to block. Give Tom Brady that extra second.
Yep.
And I think they're going to find some stuff down the field. I think Edelman has a big game. And I like the Patriots there, -3.5. The half hurts a little bit, but I don't really trust the Patriots kicking game anyways. So we're talking about just 6-point touchdowns, and they string a couple of those together.
Well, I'm very much looking forward to your 1-on-1 week.
I would take a 1-in-1 week. I went 0-2 and 0-1-1 over the past 2. So
the regression has started right after you called it. The show he wasn't here.
One day really need to learn what regression
The
means.
Patriots are 47-9 straight up off a loss since 2003, 40-16 against the spread. Take that to 2013. They're 18-4 straight up off a loss, 16-6 against the spread.
Making my argument for me. I love it.
All right, let's get to pucks with DK Nation editor Ben Zweiman. He's always a tweet away if you need fantasy advice. Ben, this is the opening faceoff. We need the best options for tonight's 5-game slate.
All right, buddy, you're looking good over there. Let's start at the top. Well, which high-priced player is worth paying up for? What do you think?
First, thank you, Kaufman. It's nice to see both of you again.
And you. It's been too long.
Thank you.
But yeah, John Tavares is a guy I'm looking at tonight. It's pretty much full narrative for him. He's going back to New York to play the Islanders, which he obviously was the captain of the team for a pretty long time. His price is down to 6.6K, which is actually really cheap for a guy like Tavares. And he's got 4 points in his past 3 games, so he's coming in hot. The Islanders have been playing really great hockey, really great defensively, but I think Tavares going back with this narrative, I think he finds the back of the net. I don't believe he scored against the Islanders last season, so he's kind of due here. So yeah, I mean that's kind of a spot, and he's probably going to be low ownership on a 5-game slate. So yeah, I kind of like Tavares on more of a narrative basis.
All right, of the 10 teams in action tonight, which one are you stacking and which line?
So I really like the Golden Knights. They're probably going to be chalky at home against the Blackhawks, but I think that's a good chalk that you have to eat. They have a really high implied goal total at 4 goals, which is, again, very, very high. I actually like their second line a little bit more than their first line. They've been kind of cold, Max Pacioretty, Paul Stastny, and Mark Stone. So the price is down on Stastny, and Stone's price is actually down compared to earlier in the season. He's at 6.8K. So, yeah, he's a little cold. Pacioretty's got 3 goals in his past 3 games, though. 3-game goal streak. So I think this is sort of the spot against the Blackhawks, who are just hemorrhaging goals to other teams lately. I think this is a good spot for Vegas' second line to start getting it going. And, yeah, I think in terms of GPPs, they're probably still a good play, but Vegas should be pretty chalky tonight, so the ownership will probably be high on both their first and second lines.
How about a net? Who do you like in the crease tonight?
Yeah, the price is down on Braden Holtby. He's at 7.5K. The Capitals are undefeated in their past 8. They haven't lost in a while. The Flyers are playing great hockey. The Capitals will have to go into Philadelphia, which is always tough. But Holtby should see a lot of shots, and the Capitals should have a pretty good shot at getting the win tonight. So I think I like that. I like that sort of combination, right? You're getting a road favorite. So his ownership should be pretty low. His price is good, so you're going to be able to save some salary. So yeah, I like the chances of Holtby getting a win, maybe getting that 35 plus save bonus tonight. And if you're going to pay up, I think Fleury, like I mentioned with Vegas, they're in a really good spot at home against the Blackhawks. So I would expect him to sort of bounce back. He hasn't been playing too well over his last couple of games, but he's always been stronger at home. So Vegas against a weaker opponent at home, I like Fleury if you're paying up. He's at 8.2K.
All right, where can we find value on tonight's slate?
Yeah, I'm gonna be a little bit of a homer to end the segment. But the Devils are at home against the Senators. The Senators haven't I sort of talked up the Senators the other night, and they burned me against the Hurricanes, so I'm down on the Senators again. But yeah, if you're looking for value that's just riddled throughout the Devils lineup, their second line, Pavel Zacha, Nico Hischier, and Jesper Bratt, all of them are below 4.3K. Hischier's the highest priced guy at center at 4.3K. The other two are right around that 3K range. So this is sort of a line that you can stack and sort of pay up for high price stacks like the Capitals or the Golden Knights, and still get a very good matchup, right? The Senators are on the road. They haven't been playing. They obviously are coming off that loss on Monday. Will Butcher is a nice guy to pair with him. He's basement pricing, and with Sami Vatanen out, Butcher is going to be skating on the first pairing for the Devils and on the first power play. So yeah, you can stack all 4 of those guys really cheap, and you can sort of just pick and choose which studs you want to fit into the rest of your lineup.
Okay, don't skate away from us just yet there, Benji. Who's your slate-approved pick?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of a homer here, but I think Taylor Hall's due. He hasn't scored in his last 5 games, but he's getting pucks on the net. He's got 17 shots on goal over his last 3 games. He's picking up assists. He's a guy who's going to skate a lot of ice time. He's going to skate on the first power play. If the Devils are going to pop tonight, if they're going to score a ton of goals against the Senators, then Hall's got to be the guy that you're going to get into your lineup. And his price has actually gone up a little bit for this matchup, which isn't surprising. But you'd think normally, if you were playing way better, that his price would be somewhere in that mid 7,000 range, high 7,000 range. So getting him at 7,100 seems like a bargain to me. He may be a little chalky, but again, 5-game slate, I think the ownership will kind of be spread out a little bit, and Hall seems like a guy where this is sort of a ceiling game for him. If he's not going to come through in this game, then I don't know when it's going to happen.
All right, good stuff, Ben.
That wraps up your New Jersey Devils talk.
Yeah, we miss you.
With Ben Zwyman.
And thank you for coming to my TED Talk. All right, just one more segment is on the way. It's football. Jeff, Reed, and Steve will rejoin us right after this break.
It's Brendan Glasheen, and with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash, seems the Seahawks caught a break with Tyler Lockett. Pete Carroll said Tuesday the team's top wideout should be okay going forward after spending Monday night in a Stanford, California hospital because of a leg injury. More specifically, it's a serious shin bruise that needed immediate treatment. Based on Carroll's words later that day, Tuesday, Lockett stayed another night at the hospital just for precautionary reasons. The contusion caused a lot of swelling. Carroll also said he'll need the rest of the week to make sure that everything goes away, but he should be fine to play next week. We've also heard word from Adam Schefter Twitter, he is reporting Lockett is on a flight to Seattle today. So thankfully for the Seahawks, they're on the bye. They don't have to worry about Week 11. Lockett's Seattle's leader in receptions, receiving yards, and touchdown grabs. He's been crucial. Pressure is off DK Metcalf to be the man. Josh Gordon still learning the offense. There's depleted depth at tight end. Luke Wilson, who also suffered an injury, a hamstring injury Monday night. It doesn't seem to really matter who's out there because Russell Wilson has been a magician. Regardless, the MVP frontrunner is a big reason for Lockett's growth, but we saw with no Lockett down the stretch against San Francisco, the challenge just keeps growing for Seattle offensively, and it feels unbeatable, that challenge. Seahawks, folks, they really dodged a bullet here.
Jeff Allard, Reed Fowler, and Steve Buchanan are back to wrap up today's show with NFL Price Check, a.k.a. will these players give you a return on your investment on the Week 11 slate? Are they going to be worth their money? Kick the tires, you know.
And most importantly, Julian Edlow, no longer here.
He's not here.
No. Lamar Jackson, he's getting a lot of MVP buzz after an impressive performance at Cincinnati. Of course, that came right after beating the Patriots. People are in this guy's corner. You can understand why. And now he's got Houston, middle-of-the-pack defense, but better than the Bengals. So, $7,700, top QB price. Too much for Jackson this week, Jeff? What do you think?
Do we have a new sponsor? What's with these fleece vests, by the way? Julian looked like he was about to go to an IPA convention or something.
Yeah, he is.
That's why he left.
Do we have a new sponsor, though? For real, let's plug them, like, no?
I don't think we do.
Everyone's just wearing the same vest today? Okay, anyways, let's go on to Lamar Jackson. I'm wasting enough time.
It's a big convention.
Lamar Jackson is 7,700. This is, we just don't see this at quarterback very often anymore. I mean, he's almost $1,000 more than Drew Brees. The thing about this is you obviously need him to hit his upside here. You need him to kind of hit his ceiling if you're really going to pay off. And he could. I mean, obviously we're going to have a faster paced matchup. The thing is there's other quarterbacks here that have bigger implied team totals. Dak with Dallas, Drew Brees with the Saints, and then obviously all the way down to Kyle Allen. So I don't think Lamar Jackson is near a must play at this price. It's just a price thing. It's not a performance thing. Don't worry. I'm not hating on Lamar Jackson, but must play, no. I think he's a little bit overpriced this week.
Reed, you have a vest on. You should probably go next.
Yeah, sounds like he is hating on Lamar Jackson.
And vests.
Yeah, and the vest. But there's only room for one vest on this show, on this panel. So Julian got kicked out. But yeah, I mean, Lamar Jackson, just right, $7,700. It's very expensive for a quarterback. But having said that, look, he's only finished 1 week outside the top 10 in his position. That was against Cleveland, where he didn't do so hot. But what you always like with Lamar Jackson is that he can make something out of nothing. And so, yes, you have to play that ceiling, but that floor is absolutely fantastic. You can clearly go down to Kyle Allen, Derek Carr at $6,100, Dak Prescott. These guys are value, but if you want to differentiate somewhere else, not go with Mike Thomas or Christian McCaffrey in those top spots, then Lamar Jackson isn't a bad play any week.
Bukes limits his vest to three-piece suits. Bukes.
I think Jackson is such an excellent play this week. Like at 7,700, you look at some of the other price tags on this slate. Michael Thomas, 9,900. Christian McCaffrey, 10,500. You know, Ezekiel Elliott, 9,000. People are going to be paying down at other positions like quarterbacks. So like for me, Lamar Jackson is probably one of the best tournament plays at quarterback this week. And you look at what the Jacksonville has faced. I'm sorry, what Houston has faced so far in terms of mobile quarterbacks. It's only been Gardner Minshew with the Jaguars, and against them, he had 90 rushing yards on 2 games. I don't think people give Minshew enough credit for how much of a mobile quarterback he's been. And then before Week 9, where they just didn't allow any passing touchdowns, 3, 3, 4, and 3 against the opposition. Like, teams are throwing against this Texans defense and having a lot of success against them. So I love Jackson at this because you're probably going to get him at a lot lower ownership than you normally would. So I love playing him this week.
All right, Christian McCaffrey is up to $10,500. Highest salary all season for him and the highest out of every player on the slate, but he's playing the Falcons. So can you really fade him this week or really any week, Reed?
Yeah, I mean, Steve just pointed to it with that 10.5 price tag. Like, it hasn't increased for the first time in 3 weeks, but it's still very expensive, and he's averaging 36 DK fantasy points at home. He clearly is the best running back on the slate. But, like always, there's value somewhere else. And Josh Jacobs at $6,900 against a Cincinnati team that has heavy favorites at home. But if you look at Christian McCaffrey and if you look at the Panthers as well, the Falcons, they don't give up a ton of yards and production through the air like they used to last year, because the receivers on the opposing teams against the Falcons have been scoring enough and have been utilized enough to not necessarily go to that running back in that scenario. So I like the receivers here in Carolina. a little bit more. But again, like I mentioned with Lamar Jackson, Christian McCaffrey at 10-5, we were willing to pay up for him last week, and this matchup is just as juicy as Green Bay. So yeah.
Steve, you willing to pay up?
So here's the thing, like if you're playing cash, you just can't fade McCaffrey. I mean, he's basically a lock for 30 DraftKings fantasy points each and every week. And the news with Devontae Freeman being out frees up someone like Brian Hill that you can just easily lock with McCaffrey and kind of offset some of that salary. With that being said, McCaffrey is probably an excellent fade in tournaments because of how expensive he is and how people want to jam him in. When you could just go down $1,500 and take Ezekiel Elliott in a really good matchup against a Detroit run defense that has just been absolutely burned on 4 different occasions, over 100 rushing yards so far. So it really depends on how you're playing it here. Like, nobody's going to come on here and say, yes, you need to fade Christian McCaffrey, because you just simply can't say that. For somebody who has the type of floor that he has, what he can do on a week-to-week basis, it's just absolutely silly. But if you're playing tournaments, I think it makes sense to fade, and cash, just got to lock him in.
Well, Jeff, yeah. Well, do you want Jeff to answer?
No, not really, but
well,
all right.
He's playing the Falcons, Jeff.
I'll just give a recap, then Kaufman will feel better. How's that, right?
Yeah, that'd be perfect. You're stealing his job, though. Yeah. You can't do that. You're going to steal his job.
Look, I think Steve actually nailed this one. I mean, I think Christian McCaffrey, you can't fade him at this point. And we saw what he did at this price last week. If everyone's about, he only scored 30 points, and he was an inch away from an extra touchdown, too. So, I mean, we know what he can do against a similar type of defense. The one thing I'll say is, let's give a little bit of credit to Atlanta's rush defense. They've improved this year. It's probably the strongest part of their defense. So this maybe isn't like a slam dunk as people think. At the same time, Carolina's got the second highest implied team total on this slate. They're scheduled to score over 28 points. Like, who's going to score those touchdowns? I mean, you're basically asking, if it's not going to be McCaffrey, then DJ Moore is going to score twice, something like that. So, yeah, as a tournament fade, I absolutely agree. You can't fit all these guys in. We just talked about Lamar Jackson being 7,700. You can't do Lamar and Christian McCaffrey and Zeke and all these guys. So you're going to have to fade someone. I think McCaffrey might set up as the right fade this week. It's just in cash games, yeah, just plug him in.
Jeff, true to his word. That was a recap. All right, if you're paying up a QB and running back, maybe you can find some value at wide receiver. There's Randall Cobb. He had almost 26 fantasy points last week against Minnesota, 4,300 this week against Detroit, bottom 5 pass defense. Steve, new thoughts? Will you look his way?
I mean, look, he had a nice game against the Vikings, 25.6 DraftKings fantasy points against the Vikings there. But what has he done the rest of the season? Like, Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, those are the 2 guys that Dak Prescott looks to throw to. Even Jason Witten is getting more work than Cobb is on a week-to-week basis. You look at a lot of the cheap receivers on this week, there's a lot of value down in that area aside from Cobb. Like, Philip Dorsett against a putrid Eagles secondary, 4,200. Auden Tate against another bad secondary in the Raiders. I just kind of like that one better. Tank Ginn, Deebo Samuel. There's a lot of value down in that low 4K range at wide receiver. People are going to be chasing points here with Randall Cobb. I don't see it here. If you're going to play anybody in this game, like I said, it's going to be Ezekiel Elliott. Randall Cobb is way too boomer bust, so I'm no interest in Cobb.
Jeff, he's making me feel pretty good about picking him up on the waiver wire.
I mean, he's playing 80% of the snaps. I mean, he's almost an every down player, which I think some people probably are a little bit surprised to hear or might just overlook. But at the same time, yeah, I mean, you saw his ceiling game last week. He made obviously a fantastic touchdown catch. But the only reason I'd even consider Cobb, to be honest, this week is if I was going with a Dak stack and I was going to use Dak Prescott as my quarterback and just do like a double stack with Cooper and Cobb. I think that's got some credit to it. Dak Prescott's obviously got a really high ceiling, playing well, great matchup. But Cobb is by no means like a cash game must or anything like that. He's just kind of a tournament dart throw that you might throw in a stack.
Dak stack. I like the sound of that, Reed. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, he's like,
way?
Yeah, no, he's the 4th option, right? You got Gallup, Witten, Zeke, and Amari Cooper. And so when you have Cobb, he's going to have those games like Steve mentioned. But you mentioned one guy that I really like is Deebo Samuel at his price tag of $4,000. I mean, he saw a huge snap share. We saw Sanders and Kittle not. Well, Kittle was not in the game and then Sanders went out. I mean, he saw a ton of targets in that game. SF of San Francisco has one of the highest implied team totals at 29. So if you want to go cheap, go with Samuel.
All right, guys. Tight end Jack Doyle with 3 straight games of double-digit fantasy points for the Colts. He's $4,000 versus Jacksonville this week. Is he worth it, Jeff?
You know, I've probably played like every week of NFL for the last 5 or 6 years on DraftKings, and I don't think I've ever seen a tight end slate this ugly. And I'm assuming George Kittle's going to miss, but even with Kittle, I mean, this is just like we're talking about Jack Doyle. He's averaging like 5 targets a game here at 4K. I think I'd rather just go down to Eric Ebron. He's cheaper. He's better in the red zone. He saw 12 targets last week. Doyle's in consideration, but yeah, I'd lean towards the cheaper target on the Colts.
About a minute left here. What do you think about this one, Reed? I don't know what I'm saying.
Yeah, just because Jack Doyle is the question.
We've turned the corner. No, Doyle rules.
Yeah. Pay up for Jared Cook for $400 more. He saw 23% target share with Drew Brees back. He gets Tampa Bay, who's one of the worst teams against the tight end position.
Steve, what do you think?
Yep, go to Jared Cook, a little bit more expensive, or if you want to go a little bit lower, Greg Olsen is sandwiched right in between Jack Doyle. They have 16 targets the last 2 weeks going against the Falcons, in which should be a pretty high-scoring game. So I think
Falcons.
The Falcons.
Falcons.
Obviously.
Boy, you guys were great. Listen, I got great news for you. If you happen to like this show and many of the people involved, we're going to do it again.
What?
Tomorrow.
Incredible.
We are 6 Eastern. Find us on Periscope, on Twitter, which is Periscope on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. We're everywhere. 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. There's a Sunday extravaganza.
What? We're giving you
can't get
everything.
enough of us. We can't stop talking about it, except when we actually have to, when we run out of time, which is right about now. Have a good night.